Scene 92, take one.
My name is Keith Greco. I was born in San Francisco East Bay in a town called Richmond. I came to Los Angeles in 1979. I was at UCLA going to the School of Fine Arts in the design department. I was interested in becoming a set designer. I was working in a picture frame shop. The first time I remember being downtown at the American Hotel was I delivered a bunch of stretcher bars I'd made for Richard Lubrick. He had me meet him at the corner of Traction and Hewitt, and I drove down here and I was like, what the hell is that? Because Dustin's plane was on the building at that point. There was some type of kismet I felt with the corner for sure. I was ready to get out of the West Side, and I remember thinking, like, what's going on down here? I had come from the suburbs of, East Bay where like Primus is from, and there were Taco Bells and things. I'd never lived in an inner city before. And I was totally intrigued by everybody living on the street and what was going on in the street, for sure. I was living over on Beverly Glen, and I needed another job. So I went to work for Rourke Graphics. And that's when I started meeting people, meeting characters that were coming in. One in particular, Don Jones, who was really on me to like, you need to get your ass off the West Side and move downtown, and you should move into the American Hotel. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard about that, but I hear there's a big waiting list. He was like, I can do something about that waiting list. And I think that it took him about 10 days, 2 weeks, and he said, there's a room. It's $160. Do you want to take it? And I was like, I'll take it. Got rid of everything I owned, everything. And it felt good. I mean, it's like you start to make up your own rules. You bought everything up to that point, and now you're like, fuck this, I'm going to start over. And that's what I did. I started dragging car hoods up the stairs 4 flights, and I was painting with anything. A can of paint that had gone bad at Rourke, some brushes that were the wrong thing. There was a Standard Rounds down the street that always had closeouts for 25 cents a can, and I just was making a mess on hoods of cars and just trying to find my way. I had one show at Rourke, my first solo show, and it was 2 walls as you walked in, left and right, and I hung car hoods on one wall and signed it with my last name. And then the other wall, they were much more childlike, word paintings. And I put those on one wall and I signed that with my first name. So when people came in, they were like, oh, there's 2 shows. Oh, same guy. They were completely different styles. One was signed with my first name and one was signed with my last name. And they didn't feel much alike. Everybody was curious. You'd get a knock on your door, you'd go knock on somebody's door and just kind of see what they were up to, what they were doing. Chuck Skull would be there eating bean dip, and the pigeons would fly in and hang out on his television and share his bean dip with him. It was Jesse Easter, the man in black, basically, of the American Hotel. I guess rumor is he's still there, holding court in his own world. Jet Jackson, of course, an icon at that point, too. Big J was there at the time. He's moved on to New Orleans. Curmudgeon-y old George, he mopped the halls, and everybody's always curious to try to see what was really going on in his room. That was a big mystery. I think there were urban legends about what that was all about. Then there was a homeless guy named Frank that was a mainstay that, as far as I'm concerned, kind of lived from one end of the corner to the next. Oh, and Lloyd, this was a good character.
Her pappy came from Texas and her mom from Arkansas.
His singing and his night train, textbook character. I remember there was a couple that had a jewelry company and they drove a little Metro. I went to deliver something that Metro one day for them, and I gave Lloyd a ride just for fun. I caught a bunch of hell for letting him get in the car, but so be it. Al's Bar was literally your living room for sure. I remember being upstairs thinking my night was over and hearing like bass coming to the ground, and it could be anybody. I know for a fact that Billy Bragg was there with his backpack on, and Fishbone was there a billion times, and the replacements had come in there. There were so many people that come through that bar. I distinctly remember Don Jones checking somebody's handgun and putting it in the refrigerator. That was like iconic moment for me. I was like, okay, cool. There's people checking their guns here. This is super funny. You didn't have to go anywhere, that's for sure. It all came to you right there. It was walking into a cartoon book for sure. Kind of helped you craft your own cartoonness, I met Richard Duardo at that picture frame store on the West Side. That was the second person that had kind of pointed me to that corner. Richard's studio was directly across the street from the American. I was looking to make a little extra money, and Richard was paying me like $100 a week to drive him around and do deliveries, and his window of his loft looked out to my window, and he would call me in the morning and say, "Good morning, Miss Mary Sunshine." We joked about, we could do it with 2 orange juice cans and some string, but it was an invaluable experience hanging out with him. He knew a lot of artists, so he introduced me to self-help graphics. He introduced me to Bob Zoll. The first time I met Mark Mothersbaugh was with him. Anybody that Richard was printing with at that point, I would have got the opportunity to meet and see how they lived. I think I was the first person that Rollo met downtown. I came down out of the American in the back stairs and opened the door, and it was almost a collision right there, I suppose. We just started chatting, and he was looking for a job, and I distinctly remember him saying he wanted like a screen printing job, and I was like, "Oh, you should go talk to Richard Eduardo." So I think we walked across the street, rang the buzzer, and Richard wasn't around. So we decided to kill some time, and that's how we became friends. And then by the time we got back, Richard was around, and I introduced the two of them, and then they ran on their own. He went to work for him, as I remember, and I still have his first print. First time I met her was like a time my parents had come to visit me for the first time downtown, and I had moved out of the American. I was living at the corner of 4th and San Pedro. My parents and I had come home from dinner or something, and she was standing on the loading dock, I'll never forget it, in some crazy Harlequin pants, and she had in her arm a bozo head, and she's like, "Hi, I'm your new roommate." And it was like some kind of love at first sight on a creative level. She was sort of my partner in crime. We were a little like Bonnie and Clyde for a few minutes. She conned me into doing so many things with her. She still does. But I love her to pieces. She was a hat maker, and there were a lot of people doing fashion and jewelry. So Oliver thought it'd be cool if we tried to do some like art market music thing. Sunday Jump was completely a renegade thing. I had some scaffolding, and we decided to put a stage up, and then I made a bunch of booths out of like some fabric of Oliver's, and I guess we probably had 300-400 people the first time we did it out there, and it was like a buck of beer, and we played Indian bingo, and we gave paintings away, and bands played all day, and it was super informal, and that worked out well. And then the next time it got a little bit bigger, and it was pretty much a daylight event. It stopped at dusk, but it was art market, total pirates, no business license, and illegal beer sales, and food booths without health department approval, all that stuff you're supposed to do. But it was basically a neighborhood block party. That's what it was. I remember Alan Odell wanting to make it a legitimate event, and I was like, no way. I do not want this to become something that's authorized. This is a bad idea. I just love the purity of it being a pirate activity where we'd show up in the middle of the night and close the street and load it up with buses and trailers and bands, and that was it, It didn't feel like an us and them situation. It really felt like everybody that was there for the same reason. I used to call it Misfit Island. Everybody had kind of come together and like feeling somewhat disenfranchised, and this little place was all about trying to make a world that made sense to us. I don't remember there being like any kind of drama where so-and-so wasn't talking to so-and-so. It didn't work like that. Everybody was pretty much sincerely interested in what the other person was doing, and I didn't have an insecure moment when I was here. I felt totally comfortable here. It was birds of a feather for sure. Historical significance is judged by the fame of those people, unfortunately, who were in there, as opposed to the culture that was there that wasn't interested in fame. There was never any intention of all of us down in Traction and Hewitt to become famous artists, from what I could tell. We weren't trying to recreate the New York art scene at all. I really felt like it was more like a gunslinging pirate town that just was making art and throwing eggs at each other. A lot of development can happen around this neighborhood, and the buildings can come and go and change, but there's probably not a building that has more significance, whether it's had famous people in it or not. I mean, it's called the American Hotel. I mean, it was sort of at the center of the cause. If we could do anything, we'd maybe want to try to find a way to protect that one building, and then everything else that could go up around it, as far as I'm concerned. It'd be an island unto itself about what happened. It could be a museum of everybody that ever did things there. There's lots of ways to reactivate that and sort of keep the essence of something alive, the message of something alive, the DNA of something. I mean, the American Hotel is this close to being a brand.
Cut.